Welcome to RSAC Conference 2025. We're here recording live from the Cyber Risk TV studio in Broadcast Alley at Moscone West. I'm your host, Mandy Logan, and joining me for this interview is Morey Haber, Chief of Security Advisor at BeyondTrust's. Welcome, Morey.
Mandy, thank you so much for having me.
I am so glad you're here. And now, in doing some prep for our interview, there was something on your resume that really jumped out at me.
Okay.
Okay, so can you tell me about your time working with the company that created flight simulators?
I can. So after I graduated college, I became a reliability engineer. And that is an engineer that tests to make sure something stays reliable, that its MTTR and its MTBF fall within certain parameters. That's the mean time to repair, the mean time to fix. So when you're building a flight simulator or a training simulator, you have to say, look, it'll last 3-4 weeks before you'll have to go in and change a light bulb, or a bolt will break, or the software needs to be rebooted. So in building those systems for C-17 aircraft, Abrams A-1A tanks, I was the reliability engineer assigned to empirically verify that those metrics could be done. So playing with engines, fake engines, like here's how you change the oil, or sitting in a tank simulator shooting fictitious enemies was a part of the job. And it was a really fun job in the early 1990s because everything was done via video disc. It wasn't
Right.
computer AI generated. It was a different world. But yeah, that's part of my background.
That's fascinating. And is that, to me, it also seems like that would allow the people inside to have consistent efforts towards stamina. Was that another part of it on the human aspect, or did you just mostly stay on the technical side?
It was on the technical side. So one of the aspects of it is when a serviceman would come in and their mission was to do maintenance, proving that they could learn maintenance on a simulator before the actual device.
Okay.
And that simulator was accurate enough so that when they went to the real device, it worked. How I got into cybersecurity after that is all of the failure rates, all the data from the real systems and the simulators needed to be correlated. And I knew how to program, so I actually wrote a software database to bring all that information, including security information. And then my security career started after that, just naturally evolving. With Microsoft Windows, doing network management, because not all networks basically broke due to misconfigurations. A lot of them in the early 2000s were cyber attacks, and I just naturally evolved into cybersecurity, and here we are today.
So are you a large proponent for emulators being used or emulation being used in training for cybersecurity?
I believe a lot in simulation before real testing,
Okay.
especially for organizations trying to simulate an outage or anything else, because when you do things on live systems, you can sometimes have repercussions that would be far more reaching, like leaving a system open to a future attack or something else. I always believe in training and emulation first before someone hits a real system.
Makes sense. I mean, we think in life all day, every day, I would rather have kind of a trial run.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, you're going to paint a wall. You put a couple of colors of paint on the wall before you do the whole wall to figure out if it's the right color. The same is true with red teaming and pen testing. You teach in a simulation environment before you go to the full systems.
Excellent. So switching gears a little bit,
Sure.
I want to discuss BeyondTrust's Microsoft Vulnerability Report.
Okay.
And I understand this is the 12th year that BeyondTrust has done this. Have you been involved all
I
12 years?
I have been involved for at least the last 7.
7? Okay.
Maybe a little bit longer, but it takes a little bit of a story to explain. In 2018, Baumgar acquired BeyondTrust, Lieberman, and Avecto. This is just a history lesson in itself. The original Microsoft Vulnerability Report came from the Avecto product line.
Okay.
I came from BeyondTrust, and I've been with the company for 21 years now, which is a little bit of a unicorn in the industry. That report basically carried through the acquisitions. And what it does is it looks like every year's Microsoft vulnerability releases, their patch releases, and performs an analysis of how many are critical, how many are medium, how many low, but what were the underlying effects? Was this patch a bad patch where it caused outages or had some ill effects on systems? Did it have privileged escalation vulnerabilities that it was solving for? Did it allow for other types of attack vectors to occur? Really a detailed analysis of everything about them. In the 2024 report that was just released, we found that 40% of the vulnerabilities Microsoft patched basically allowed privileged escalation. That means that you could be a standard user and use that exploit to gain admin privileges. That's a staggering number considering the amount of identity-based attacks today. The Verizon data breach report, which came out about 2 weeks ago, cited that 80% of all attacks have an identity component. So if you look at that, those two statistics merged together, we really find that most of the attacks occurring today are due to some identity attack vectors. Yes, we still have vulnerabilities and exploits and software flaws. We still need to discover vulnerability management and patch, but social engineering and credential theft are really on the rise, and that's the biggest worry for people today.
It absolutely is. Now, when you're talking about escalation of privilege, in your mindset, having done this now for the 7 years that you've been involved, and my understanding is that the overall downward trend in critical vulnerabilities is being seen.
Correct.
But can you give like a correlation or a numbers on the escalation of privilege vulnerabilities or attacks that are being done and how it relates to the overall critical vulnerabilities?
I can. So critical vulnerabilities are vulnerabilities that would basically have a CVS score of 9 or higher by normal trade. So what we're thinking about here is something that is wormable and exploitable and immediately gives you admin rights. While coding has gotten better, AI has gotten better, code reviews, training, etc., has decreased the number of critical vulnerabilities. What we find in the industry is that some of the mediums and lows, if exploited even through social engineering attacks, allow the threat actor to basically gain admin rights, and that's key. It means you still have to patch everything, but most people got to get that critical done right now. We'll get to that medium in 30, 60, 90 days, and it could still lead to admin rights, and that's the key message that people need to think about.
Well, but the sheer volume of medium or low, like there's so many more. Am I correct in believing that in the 2024 report there was about 40 critical vulnerabilities?
I don't remember the exact statistic, but there were well over 240 something total for the year. But when you consider 40% of that did have privilege escalation, you're over 100 of them that could have been leveraged to get local admin rights.
So I am curious with this. Are you talking about just CISA-KEV? Are you talking about the known exploited vulnerabilities?
Yes, I am.
So what about the vulnerabilities, like just because they have not been exploited doesn't mean they aren't critical?
Well, that's key. So many times the proof of concepts are hard to implement, or there is no working exploits, but they've been deemed critical. Teams have not figured out, or no one has put the effort, or it's too complex to figure out how to actually exploit, and it becomes theoretical only. You can't gamble on that when you know the severity and you know the patch exists. You have to treat all of them as if an exploit's available. Otherwise, you potentially could be that next victim of, yeah, there is a working exploit. Someone else developed it, and it's now being used on a regular basis. Unfortunately, that happens quite a bit of, you know what, there's no working exploit, I think I have a little time. It's just a matter of time for a lot of them until that occurs.
So with that and the other key findings, what information would you give to a CISO or to a security team in using this information effectively?
So there's two pieces. One emphasizes what we've all known for years. You have to do vulnerability management, you have to do patch management. But more importantly, you have to do good identity security hygiene. You have to make sure that there are no leftover accounts that can be used for privileged escalation. For example, if you have local administrative rights, if you have dormant accounts on systems or shadow IT accounts, those need to be managed properly as a part of your joiner, mover, leaver process. Then you also have to understand the identity security hygiene of those accounts that could be leveraged from these vulnerabilities. This is where it gets a little nuanced. If you think about a certification report for IGA, it's that snapshot of time of this is the account, this is where the person has access, etc. But it doesn't tell you what's called paths to privilege. I have an account, it has an identity owner, but if I do this, this, and this, I actually could gain admin, even without the vulnerability and exploit. So BeyondTrust has a solution called Identity Security Insights that's designed specifically to do that. It takes the understanding of an identity and account and gives you a visual map of how it could be exploited and what the user's true privileges are, what they really could do in an environment. It complements the Microsoft Vulnerability Report because it shows you what identities could be abused locally, natively, even without an exploit, and if an exploit actually occurred. So if I know that this user now is compromised, the path to privilege in the solution shows you how far they can actually get in terms of a hack in your environment. And that's key. Here at RSA, we announced this week that we have a free assessment of that tool. So any user can sign up on our website, BeyondTrust.com, enter their information. They'll get a call within about 15 minutes within business hours. And it takes about 2 hours to set up, and it'll give you that health report of here are your accounts that are at risk, here's ones that may be dormant or have never had their passwords changed or administrative access that are shared, to help you understand that, look, a low-level vulnerability escalated to this user could then compromise your entire environment. And we're doing this as a free assessment for anybody that asks, something to give back to the community, which nowadays, there's not many people that are willing to do that.
True. I mean, I think there's a lot of individuals who are interested in the greater good, or they wouldn't stay in security roles, especially in the government.
Correct.
But with BeyondTrust's offering, is it useful for non-Microsoft environments?
It is. So the way the offering works is it connects to your IDPs, Entra ID, Okta, Ping. If you're a BeyondTrust customer, it connects to our products as well, and then it provides that report. It is independent of Microsoft because it's identity-based. The results complement the report we've been speaking about because it shows you how an exploit could actually be used throughout an entire environment. If you try to think about it in a different perspective, how do you do vulnerability management for identities? And BeyondTrust has figured out how to do that, and that's our offering, and now available as a free risk assessment.
I am so glad that that is available, and I'm glad for our audience that they're able to take advantage of that.
Happy.
So thank you so much for joining us, Morey.
You're very welcome, and a pleasure being here today.
Excellent. To find out more about BeyondTrust, please visit securityweekly.com/BeyondTrustRSAC. For all RSAC 2025 coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC. Thank you again, Morey.
Thank you very much for having me.
Stick around. We'll be back after the break with more interviews live from the RSAC Conference 2025.